I have seen so much health and nutrition advice that contradicts itself all the time, over and over. One of the basic fundamental beliefs that I had that I knew was right, I didn't question it, it was just what it is there are negative effects of eating meat, and that a carnivore diet could not be healthy. There's no possible way. And so when I got faced with the situation of my son had cancer, I really needed to understand for myself and embrace cause and effect and see if what we were being told was based off of real results or if it was based off of kind of just an idea that may or may not be right. I needed to know for myself. So I started diving in. Research. The China study was one of the first books that I read, and that's a study in China to where they correlated, to summarize a big book, eating meat causes cancer. That was how the book was written and what I got from it. So that scared me. It terrified me. Meat had to be bad based off that. So I cut it out of my son's diet, and then as I went into health and seeing that some things were working, some things were not working, I started questioning it and hearing about the carnivore diet and people having really good results. It did not make sense to me. So I was mortified at the thought of somebody doing carnivore. It has to be something that's going to kill them. So I started researching and diving in, and then did a 2-week experiment for myself. So in the first steps of our health journey and the nutrition, we really went whole plant-based. And with that, started to research and seeing things pop up that were negative. And so that was really confusing. Like, why are we having any sort of negatives? At first, there were definitely positives, and I think that was coming from the removing processed foods, and because that is a big deal. But there were things like, a pale complexion, skin issues, brittle hair. There's a lot of things just started popping up that just seemed to need to be questioned. Why are these things happening? And so as kept diving in, the carnivore diet kept popping up. And so I thought that was way too extreme, so I just kind of kept pushing that off, push it off, and went into the bulletproof diet. So Dave Asprey is one of my absolute go-tos. I love the way that he questions everything and dives into that. And meat was a big part of the bulletproof diet, his plan. So that got me thinking, why are we recommending meat if meat causes cancer? Why are we recommending meat if that is like one of the worst things you can do? So diving into that, well, there's a lot of nutrients that are devoid in plants. Curious. And meat is extremely bioavailable in the nutrients that it offers. So here we go. Start having a little bit of a transition towards maybe meat's not bad. And that led me into starting to read things like the Carnivore Code and Dr. Sean Baker and Dr. Paul Saladino. Now, Saladino has changed his approach a lot, but to the point that meat has a lot of nutrients in it. And now those nutrients are going to be your B vitamins, a lot of your minerals such as selenium or copper, zinc. All of those are going to be nose to tail in there. Collagen is another massive factor in there, as working with ancient nutrition really has shown a massive improvement in people's lives. So started seeing how these animal nutrients were having these positive effects on my well-being. And as I've gone through learning and things, I've really distilled it down into there's 2 major causes of disease. Those 2 causes are nutrient deficiencies and toxicities. And that is what I loved so much about the carnivore type approach, was that it removes the toxicities that we find. The big 3 for me are going to be vegetable oils, added sugar, and gluten. Conveniently, they aren't in the carnivore diet. They don't exist in there. With the toxicities being removed, and then the focus on adding nutrients. So your nutrients, there's a lot of them that are only found in meat. So we're removing toxicities and we're adding nutrients. And that combination, I think, is why it's working. I think that's why carnivore's working. My gut tells me there's a long-term consequences of only doing carnivore, but I think that we need to change our perception on meat is bad and plants are perfect. I think that is just the big takeaway that I want you to have in listening to this, and we're going to go into a lot more on the whys. A lot of the common nutritional advice that I've come across is do things like juicing, eat a lot of whole plants, whole grains, whole nuts. Doing all of those things are the perfect cure for health. What I found is eating that way does have a lot of nutrient deficiencies. It also has something that is referred to as an anti-nutrient, things that take away the nutrients that we otherwise would be able to get. And so some of the common deficiencies in like the vegan diet are going to be B12, vitamin D3, omega-3s, iron, calcium, zinc, iodine, and that's just part of them. And part of the reason that is going to be a deficiency is not only because it's maybe not in a bioavailable form, but it's those anti-nutrients. Those anti-nutrients keep our bodies from being able to use it, so it just kind of locks them up. With those nutrients, I've been really taken by how important B vitamins are. And so I have a gene variation called the MTHFR, as does Lander, and I do believe that played a crucial part in why he got cancer. So B vitamins are very important, especially riboflavin. So the MTHFR gene mutation has to do with methylation, and it's a methylating of your DNA and how things are supposed to properly work. It's really complicated, and I'm not an expert on that, but understanding that is dependent on methylated forms of B vitamins is very, very important. Those B vitamins are found in meat and eggs. So that is one thing that I'm really trying to create awareness around, in that you've got to eat for the B vitamins. They're not as available in plants, and especially not riboflavin. That is a hard one to get. The nutrients that are in meat are able to be used by the body better. That's just kind of the big takeaway. Without the toxins of a processed food, vegetable oils, sugar, and your gluten or other plant proteins. Nutrients are not only vitamins. Nutrients are also minerals, and the importance of minerals cannot be understated. So things like copper and selenium, iodine are things that we are typically deficient in, and especially magnesium. All of those are extremely important in how the body functions, and the negative consequences are extreme. To add to the importance of meat, the following are only found in such foods. First is going to be creatine. It's a key to the brain and muscle function. It's also produced by the liver, but not in optimal amounts. Carnosine, antioxidant, considered non-essential because it's formed in the body. Vitamin D, this is the darling of the mainstream health. I doubt there are many who haven't heard of the importance of vitamin D. If only it was that easy. D2 is what's found in plants, and is significantly less beneficial than D3, which is found in meat. A side note, vitamin A and K2 are crucial for the body's ability to utilize vitamin D. The big argument against meat is the environmental impact, the humane aspects of it, and I am not going to be one to argue against those things. I think the conventional model is broken. I think that the way that animals are raised is of the utmost importance, and it has a massive impact on the environment, the animal, and the end product. The conventional model of confinement, of feeding them strictly grains, corn, soy, that's not a good model. I don't think that works, and I don't think it is sustainable. But what does work is sourcing these products from local farmers that are really implementing these regenerative practices. So we cannot compare a ground beef that is raised on a feedlot to a 100% grass-fed, grass-finished animal out on a pasture living its best life. So I'm not here to argue that, but I think that by comparing those two is extremely important. When you look at the omega fatty acid makeup on a grain-fed animal versus a pasture-raised and finished animal, it's incredibly different. And that's going to be when we're talking about those deficiencies and toxicities I brought up at the very beginning. The omega-6s, especially that linoleic acid, are going to be built up in the grain-fed products. So they actually get incorporated into the cells and they're there. So you're going to have a higher omega-3 or a higher omega-6, which is going to have a negative impact. Your omega-3s are found in your plants that the animals consume. That is where you get the DHA, the EPA that we hear a lot about, eating those wild-caught fish. It's also in your grass-fed animals. So sourcing them from a grass-fed, grass-finished, local farm helps everybody. Everybody wins in that model. So the animal wins, the consumer wins, the environment wins, the farmer wins. I think that the sourcing is as important of a topic in all of this as anything else. Before I make any sort of a change for my family, I want to understand. I want to make sure that I'm making the best possible decision to help them. And the big eye-opener for me was a friend who was having some major gastric issues, some major issues, and there were a lot of bleeding when they were going to the bathroom. Could not figure out what was going on. But what he found is that when he was doing carnivore, only eating meat, the bleeding was reduced or even stopped. So that is when I decided I'm going to dive in and I'm going to understand, is this really something that has a positive impact, or is it just absolutely crazy? I began reading a lot of books, and those books were The Carnivore Code by Dr. Paul Saladino, The Carnivore Diet by Dr. Sean Baker, Lies My Doctor Told Me by Dr. Ken Berry, The Carnivore Cookbook by Craig and Maria Ermrich. The Big Fat Surprise was really incredible because we have been told that fat causes all problems. That's just far from the truth. And then The Bulletproof Diet by Dave Asprey, who again is not carnivore, but he's an absolute hero of mine, and I follow all of his stuff. So after going through a lot of those books and videos, the tipping point was going to be my dear friend Lisa Fisher, who is as passionate about health as I am. And so she did carnivore. She experimented with it, and she had a lot of positive things. And so she challenged me to try it out. So I did for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, I did complete carnivore, and that was going to be eggs, meat, and dairy. The dairy's a whole nother topic, but sheep cheese and goat cheese and raw milk, that is all I had for 2 weeks. The results that I found was I actually slept better. I was less stressed, less anxiety. So 4 kids, a business, too many projects. Stress is something that I deal with on a regular basis, and that was helped. Also, the energy. I had more energy. And I go through periods where I'm extremely fatigued, and I think that goes back to stress. But also, it's really easy to have things hide in your diet. And what I found with carnivore was that there was only a few things that I was eating and a whole lot that I wasn't eating. And I think it's those things that we're not eating that have the major impact. Inevitably, anything that is so contrary to common beliefs, there's going to be some questions. And so some of those questions that I've found are, what about saturated fat? What about not having fiber in the diet? What about cholesterol? Because everybody's on statins, everybody's on high blood pressure medicine, and all of that is caused by fat and a lack of fiber, right? A couple more of the resources that I would recommend to dive into those are, again, The Big Fat Surprise. That was incredible. The Great Cholesterol Myth by Johnny Bowden, Ph.D., and cardiologist Stephen Sintera. The Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung. They all go into this fat and cholesterol idea that I think that we've really got it wrong. I think that saturated fats are extremely important for overall health, and I include a lot of that in our diet and what I feed my kids. So real grass-fed butter, I'm not scared to do that. The saturated fat in grass-fed, grass-finished meats, I think it's very important. I think that's where a lot of the cognitive improvement we saw were, hey, getting enough fat in your diet also helps you stay full. You're not starving right after you eat. And all of those things add up to just overall well-being. Continue to research. I do not get boxed in to where I only accept this one thing. I think that's part of where these diets have really had a downside, is whether it's carnivore or vegan or this or that, keto, paleo, whatever, is it's being so ingrained into this one way that you're unwilling to question anything else. So going back to those models, cause and effect. Is it working? Is it not working? Why is it working? Why is it not working? Ask questions. Is this working for me? Continue to do it and learn. It's not working. Change something up and continue to improve. So don't get caught up in a tribalism and dogma. Learn and apply the best practices.